Activities grind to a halt as Gapoa workers demand 20% of container business for Meridian Port Services to authorities. Meeting between government and teacher unions on cost of living allowance is deadlocked. Stop work, a warning from Lands Commission to illegal occupants and developers on state lands at Mimpenhuasem in Greater Accra region. Crowds line up in Tokyo to pay their last respects to former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, assassinated last week. Good evening and thanks for joining us for News Hour at 7. We are live on GTV and GBC News. My name is Clara Blan. Don't forget we're also streaming live via Facebook at Ghana. We also have Jonathan and team to translate the news into sounding language. I am Brahmatu Mahmoud Jawandu. Good evening. To our first story, activities at the Tema Port came to a halt in the early hours of Tuesday, July 12, 2022, as vessels were not allowed in or out of the port. Workers of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority demanded that Meridian Port Services cede 20% of the container business to the authority. According to the workers, Meridian Port Services, through a concession agreement, took over the container business and agreed to cede 20% to Gapoa. Although Cabinet has given approval for this to be done, the workers say MPS has failed to keep its side of the bargain. They said they will not go back to work until their demands were met. Our Tema regional correspondent Michael Duonu was at the port and brings us more on the development.
We are still on strike. That's all that he has said. We don't want to give any further detail. No, we are not boycotting the meeting.
We are demonstrating because the MPS, MPH are disrespecting the cabinet decisions. The MPS are intentionally refused to obey the direct order from the cabinet. We are working. The workers are still working, but we are making sure that no vessel move to outside the port. And as I'm speaking to you now, there's so many vessels in at the breakwaters. As I'm speaking to you now, Anchorage. So and some too are calling tomorrow. We are not going to allow. As I'm speaking to you now, the vessels are there. They are ready to go, but the unions are not ready to allow them to go, all because we want them to sign just the 20%. We are giving them only 2 days. They can sign it today. They can sign it tomorrow. Failure to do so will bring so many catastrophe.
So that is the demands of GPHA workers. Until the president comes to speak to them, they are not going back to work. And as I speak to you, vessels are not moving in and vessels are not moving out. For GBC News, my name is Michael Duonu, reporting from Tema Harbour.
Now, the 4 striking teacher unions remain on strike as its meeting with the government today ended in a stalemate. Representatives of the unions walked out of the meeting, citing betrayal of trust on the part of government. Addressing the media, the leadership of the union said governments demanded they call off their strike before the negotiations could start. This was why they took an early leave of the meeting. The leadership of the unions described the situation as unfortunate and said they would continue with their strike until further notice. The president of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT, Reverend Isaac Owusu, and president of the National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT, Mr. Angel Kabonu, spoke to the media.
Are still on strike. We are still on strike. That's all that he has said. We don't want to give any further detail. No, we are not boycotting the meeting. There are other people still in there.
So why are you leaving?
That one will talk to you about it. But for now, the strike is still in force.
Meanwhile, the Deputy Minister for Employment and Labour Relations, Mr. Bright Rekubrobe, has described as unfortunate an earlier appeal for the striking teachers' union to reconsider their industrial action. Although he could not give timelines to the next meeting, Mr. Rekubrobe was hopeful more engagement would be held to resolve the impasse.
Issue is that government maintains that we want to meet them and start negotiating, but we can't do this because we are constrained under the law not to negotiate when one party is on strike. And so organized labor suggested that we adjourn the meeting and do more talking for them to call off the strike, and then we start the negotiation. So that is where we are now. The call was from organized labor for us to adjourn, so that we do more engagement. They themselves are going to talk to the teacher unions. We ourselves also do same, and then have a meeting, start negotiating for a better conditions of service for Ghana work.
The Deputy Secretary General of the Trades Union Congress, Mr. Joshua Ansah, says today's meeting, which ended inconclusive, was expected. The government failed to put a proposal on the table. Speaking to journalists in Accra, Mr. Ansah described the teacher strikes as legitimate. He asked government to find a lasting solution to the issue to avoid a labor unrest.
Was for organized labor. It wasn't for teacher unions meeting. It was organized labor, and organized labor include all the teacher unions and all other sector unions. So if you say that you want to deal with teacher unions in this matter, a matter that affects all workers in this very country, I don't think it's fair. So I'm not disappointed that they went.
Senior high schools nationwide were expected to receive food supplies latest by close of today. The Minister for Education, Dr. Yao Osei Edutrum, gave the assurance during a meeting with the leadership of the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary School, CHAS, last week. CHAS warned that senior high schools might soon shut down if the government failed to supply them with adequate foodstuffs to feed students. At Tamale in the northern region, our correspondent Murtala Isa reports some schools are yet to receive food supply as promised. That story later. The Lands Commission is cautioning all illegal occupants and developers on state lands at Mpemhuasem in the Greater Accra region to halt, discontinue and relocate or face forceful eviction. The Commission says it will demolish all illegal structures on the said land, which houses some churches, institutions of higher learning and homes. Also, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources is to rezone the Sakumono Ramsar site at Tema and all properties within the boundary demolished. This was at a media briefing in Accra.
Several notices since the year 2010. Persons engaged in these encroachments, including Ideal College, the University of Professional Studies, Accra, UPSA, which has a hostel on the land, and several churches. The last being a press release on 16th April 2022 and public notice of demolition posted within the area in April 2022. By letter dated 12 April 2022, the Ghana Police Service was engaged to provide security to the Commission's contractor protecting the land. The same letter was copied to the Greater Accra Regional Police Command, the East Legon Police Command, and the Legon Police Command. To ensure that developments are done in accordance with the approved local plan, the Greater Accra Regional Lands Commission has commenced the process to regularize the interests of UPSA in its hostel and other educational institutions. In the case of the Ideal College, the proprietor, Dr. Joseph Kobna Esibu, had been advised to formally apply for regularization on 2 separate parcels of land within the enclave.
We are engaging the Regional Security Council with the support of the regional minister. Yes. First of all, notices have been served on the general public as to the fact that those who are encroaching on the Ramsar site, they must be warned. Very soon, we'll be coming there with the Regional Security Council, and when we get there, if we determine and we find out that you are in the waterway, yes, your building will be brought down. Yes. So we are still engaging, and then we are still doing our groundwork well. There is a previous boundary. That boundary has been encroached so much, and we are trying to draw another boundary where at the end of it, the middle of that boundary will be treated as the core area. Yes. Anybody who will fall within that core area, then your building will be brought down.
Let's now take you to Parliament, where the Minority Caucus has expressed displeasure at plans by the Electoral Commission (EC) to use the Ghana card for the compilation of a new voters register for the 2024 presidential and parliamentary elections in the country. Addressing the media in Parliament, the Minority Leader, Mr. Haruna, said such a move would disenfranchise a lot of Ghanaians, since many citizens are yet to receive their Ghana cards.
Many Ghanaians who are still struggling to have access to a national ID card legitimately. That public good must be made increasingly available to every qualified Ghanaian. Currently, the National Identification Authority has registered 16,654,000 persons. Cards printed 16,341,000. Card issued 13,300,000 against a voter register of 17 million. If you use that instrument of a national ID card against a voter population of 17 million, then there is a critical technical departure from the requirement. You may not even have a voter register to rely on for the conduct of the 2024 presidential and parliamentary election, because the number of Ghanaians on the voter register far exceeds the number of Ghanaians on the national ID card data. And yet the national ID card has other persons, including foreigners, on it. Given the struggling IMF economy, we do not think that we should be spending more money in the compilation of a new voter register.
Back to our earlier story, senior high schools nationwide were expected to receive food supplies latest by close of today. The Minister for Education, Dr. Yao Osei Educhum, gave the assurance during a meeting with the leadership of the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools, CHAS, last week. CHAS warned that senior high schools might soon shut down if the government failed to supply them with adequate foodstuffs to feed students. At Tamale in the northern region, our correspondent Murtala Isa reports some schools are yet to receive food as promised.
It is almost 6 p.m. and I am at the Viting Senior High School. My checks here indicate that food has not come. I've also been to Ganasco, I've been to Tamale Senior High School, I've been to Northern Business Senior High School and Business Secondary School, all inside Tamale. And there is nowhere where government's promise to bring them food before close of day today has actually been fulfilled. Sources within these schools have been telling me that they are very hopeful that by tomorrow government will come in, but it is just hope that they are hoping. They are not certain about what will actually happen tomorrow. For most of the senior high schools in the northern region, particularly in the metropolis and the Sanargu municipality, the populations are very huge. In Damascus, for example, I am told they have over 3,700 students. Majority of these students are boarders and they have to depend on the school to feed. Some headmasters have resorted to begging suppliers. I am told that they are also practicing what some of them want to term as hand to mouth. So you go out there onto the market, get supplies for feeding today and hope that tomorrow something will happen. Tomorrow, if you don't get anything or hear from any authority, then you go back to the market and beg for supplies. Some are serving their students cocoa without sugar, Tom Brown without sugar, and there is also shortage of bread, milk in some of these schools. Some old students of some schools, for Tamasco, for example, I know that Ibrahim provided a tractor load of food a few months back, but I am told that as a result of the challenges that the supply is almost depleted, and so the schools are really gnashing. There are fears that students in these schools may start agitating, and headmasters, even though they are not willing to speak on camera, are appealing to government to expedite action and bring food supplies to the various schools. Mutala Issa for GBC News.
The Private Newspaper Publishers Association of Ghana will elect new officers on Friday, August 12, 2022, to manage its activities from 2022 to 2025. An election committee made up of Mr. Ben Asoro, managing editor of the Catholic Standard, as chairman, Mr. Jamfi Boateng, former editor Christian Messenger, and Mr. Desmond Dakon of the Catalyst newspaper as members, has been formed. Kentimani Layosoa serves as the secretary to the committee. He says both the elections and declaration of results will be held on Friday, August 12, 2022. Picking of nomination forms and filing of same is from Monday, July 4, 2022 to Friday, July 15, 2022. Nomination fees for all positions across board is 300 Ghana cedis. Deadline for the payment of dues by all members is Friday, July 29, 2022. Publication of list of candidates and eligible voters will be published in selected newspapers on Monday, August 1, 2022. Filing of nominations will be held on Tuesday, August 2, 2022, with vetting of all aspiring candidates taking place on Thursday, August 4, 2022, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Conveners of the Arise movement have refuted claims that protesters in the group's recent Krom Ayeshi demonstration in Accra injured some police personnel. Addressing the media at a news conference in Accra, a leading member of Arise Ghana, Mr. Bernard Mona, disclosed that 93 protesters were injured in that demonstration. One person even lost his eyesight through the clashes that ensued. He accused the police of demonstrating unprofessional conduct during the event.
Ghana will continue to follow up on all those injured through the unprovoked conduct and barbaric brutalities of the Ghana Police Service on the 28th of June 2022 at the Obra Spot in Accra. We shall equally invest our time and energy in securing the freedom and liberty of the innocent protesters who were arrested and being persecuted. In keeping with our mandate and objective, excruciating hardships confronting the average Ghanaian citizen, occasioned by the imposition of draconian taxes, high cost of petroleum products, skyrocketing inflation, the free fall of the national currency, the cedi, high level of unemployment amongst the youth stated. Prior to this, ladies and gentlemen of the press, Arise Ghana has scheduled a public forum on the 20th of July 2022 at the Nat Hall in Accra on the theme, quote, Ghana's current socio-economic position and the prospects of an IMF program, unquote, at which several distinguished scholars, experts, nationalists, activists would share their knowledge with the people of Ghana. We therefore call on all Ghanaians to actively participate in all these important programs, especially the 22nd August demonstration in Kumasi, which are aimed in birthing a new paradigm of responsible and accountable leadership in our country.
As part of efforts to improve community philanthropy across the globe, the West Africa Civil Society Institute and Star Ghana Foundation are engaging key players as civil society organizations face a global decline in donor funding. Participants explore strategies which can help mobilize resources internally and externally to improve the quality of life in various communities across the globe.
Civil society often struggles with dependence on donor funding, which hinders sustainability, distracts them from their missions, and encourages a short-term strategy of chasing funds. This makes local fundraising activities and mobilizing a strong local support base more important than ever. For this reason, 8 countries are collaborating to implement the Giving for Change program to help promote community development across the globe. The Giving for Change project covers 8 countries in Africa, Asia and South America. It is a 5-year project which started 18 months ago, funded by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Executive Director of Global Fund for Community Foundation, Ms. Jenny Hodgson, said the program seeks to empower communities and therefore all must embrace it.
All communities have assets and resources and knowledge and networks, and that these need to be the starting point for any kind of successful, sustainable development.
The Executive Director of Star Ghana Foundation, Mr. Ibrahim Tanko Amidu, called on government to support the program by allocating adequate funds for rural communities.
Government can also support, local resource mobilization through creating an enabling environment. We might even want to look at a match fund that may be a community that is able to raise maybe 60% of the cost of a project, might get 5%, of the money from a government source.
Launched in 2021, Giving for Change program seeks to transform communities by promoting local giving as a strategy for achieving community-led development.
The Minister for Education, Dr. Yao Osei Edutrum, has reiterated that technical vocational education and training TVET holds the key to the country's industrialization agenda. The technical sector, he stressed, has witnessed capital injection to put on path to accelerate growth and development. Dr. Osei Edutrum was inaugurating a science laboratory for the Kumasi Academy Senior High School at Asokorimampong in the Ashanti region.
The project was initiated and financed by the Past Student Association of the Kumasi Academy Senior High at the cost of 9.4 million cedis. The facility is named Akuninin Science Lab because it is a gift from past students who were affectionately called Akuninin. The lab has a dedicated science library to be stocked with contemporary science books and computers with internet connectivity where students and their teachers can carry out research to enhance teaching and learning. The president of the All Student Association, Dr. Kwabena Dapasia Kwan, said they would set up a fund to maintain the beauty of the facility throughout its lifespan. The master of the school, Mr. Samuel Kwame Gato, appealed to government to help expand the school's dining hall to accommodate the ever-increasing student population. The Ashanti Regional Minister, Mr. Simon Osei Mensah, appealed to the students to be disciplined and take their lessons seriously. The Minister for Education, Dr. Yao Osei Edutrum, disclosed government's plan to adopt the school as a TVET center and resource it to meet the demands of students.
All the schools across the country will be looking at your example of an old students association that puts up a top-level 21st century STEM center, science laboratory. Because you see, they added the robotics and everything. So this is not your regular science lab. You actually have done 21st century STEM lab.
Residents of Ekropom and Edubrim in the Lebele districts of the Western region were displaced by a rainstorm last week have received relief items worth 250,000 Ghana cedis.
Ago, a rainstorm ravaged two farming communities, Ekropon and Edubrim in the Lembele district. Roofs were ripped off while mud and thatched houses were destroyed. The victims wrung their hands, calling on several organizations and individuals for help. In response to their appeal, Memphis Metropolitan Construction has presented 500 bags of cement, 150 bags of rice, 1,000 pieces of roofing sheets, and some food items to the affected communities. The Lembele District Chief Executive, Mr. Kwesi Bonzo, said the assembly was in talks with the Ghana Red Cross Society and the UNHCR to provide temporary shelter for over 300 displaced persons, while efforts were underway to relocate the people. The Western Regional Minister, Mr. Kwabena Dakumensan, received the items on behalf of the people and said the Regional Coordinating Council would support the relocation process. He advised the people to embrace the relocation in their own interest.
All the crop compensation will be taken care of because half of the land the chiefs are giving it to us. The Citizens Assembly is also going to help mobilize support so we can get all the infrastructure in place in the area in terms of roads, in terms of lighting and the like. We are also bringing borehole to the place so that immediately they start setting up, they can work.
The operations officer of Memphis Metropolitan Construction, Mr. Sefas Kafui, said the company, which is undertaking various road projects in the Western region, including the Semai area, felt obliged to give back to society, particularly victims of the rainstorm.
It's still News Hour live on GTV and GVC News. When we return from a short break, Maurice Obete will bring you the business segment just there.
Good evening, welcome to Business, brought to you by MTN. My name is Morris Ogbete. Our very first story, the 2022 Media Budget Review expected to be presented in Parliament on Wednesday, July 13, 2022, has been pushed to July 27, 2022. The postponement of the Media Budget Review and supplementary estimates for the 2022 financial year is due to the ongoing talks between government and the IMF, which kicked off last week.
Government was not sure about seeking IMF support a couple of weeks ago, but found its hands were tied after lawmakers stalled a $1 billion loan, an unpopular electronic payment tax meant to generate revenue, failing to live up to expectation. Some analysts say though it is too early to conclude that the e-levy is underperforming, but there are fears that the debt-to-GDP ratio, which the IMF reported that in April it has crossed 81% mark, gives cause for concern. Food and fuel prices have jumped significantly, with inflation for May 2022 pegged at 27.23%, mainly driven by headwinds from the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February this year. Demand for cost of living allowances by organized labor has been mounting, and analysts say this development deserves to be given attention before government concludes negotiations with the Bretton Woods institution for support.
We scheduled the date for 13 before the announcement of the engagement with the IMF. So clearly, as human as it is, we should all understand that in this data finding mission of the IMF, we need that space and time to address that and give them, once we are done, 25th, we'll come to Parliament and do the media budget review. And you should all know that per the PFM law, we have up until 31st of July to do that. So it's still within the law.
The government is yet to come up with how much it will secure from the IMF as balance of payment support. Some analysts say between $1.5 to $3 billion will be needed urgently to shore up Ghana's gross international reserve, which as of April 2022 stood at $8.3 billion as against $9.7 billion in December 2021, with 3.7 months import cover. The dip in reserve has impacted negatively on the value of the local currency, with the cedi losing about 20% of its strength against the dollar in the first half of 2022 due to capital flight, debt servicing, that's exacerbating food and fuel prices. Ghana joined a league of 107 countries that have run to the IMF for assistance. These include Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Rwanda, Kenya, Senegal, Tunisia, Egypt, Mozambique, Zambia, Morocco, Madagascar, Guinea, Gabon, Chad, among others. Edward Nyakun, reporting for GBC News.
Away from that story, the African growth recovery story has been impressive despite the threat posed by COVID-19, food and fuel price hikes, exacerbated by the Russian-Ukraine crisis. However, panelists at a virtual conference held by the African Union expressed concerns about how to sustain the growth momentum on the continent and attract private sector investment.
Africa is unable to really get a fair share of investments funds around the world. Experts tell us that around the world, each given year, there's close to $279 trillion available for investment around the world, and Africa gets about $48 billion. That is far inadequate, and we are working with the OECD to come up with an investment investment observatory, which is aimed at assisting a lot of African countries become investment ready so that they are able to mobilize resources.
We know that one of the big challenges facing development in Africa in the past has been the cyclicality of growth. You can never take particularly strong growth for granted. It's tended to be accompanied by cycles. And when we look at the experience of countries that were able to develop successfully, that were able to industrialize with great success, one key feature stands out, and that is they were able to enjoy sustained growth over a longer period of time.
To this day, I still believe that signing the African Growth and Opportunity Act was one of the most important things I did as president. AGOA created new market opportunities and drove up both trade volumes and economic diversification efforts all across the continent, ushering in a period of remarkable and unprecedented economic growth. New jobs were created. The export competitiveness of many African products increased, and the region became a recognized and reliable supplier. Of course, the political and economic landscape of Africa has transformed in countless ways in the since AGOA was launched. The continent has the youngest and fastest growing population anywhere on Earth. By 2050, 1 of every 4 people on our planet will be African.
With international business now, the euro hovered close to parity with the US dollar on Tuesday as the Eurozone's energy supply crisis and economic woes continue to depress the common currency. The euro was trading 0.3% lower, around $1.07 on Tuesday morning. As the euro dashes towards parity with the US dollar, currency traders say the slide is unlikely to stop there. While a weakened euro should worry European consumers, US travelers visiting Europe could benefit. Fears of a recession have grown in recent weeks due to rising uncertainty over the bloc's energy supply, with Russia threatening to further reduce trading at 7 cedis 30 pesos. The pound is going for 8 cedis 97 pesos and the euro going for 7 cedis 44 pesos. MTN.
Live on News Hour, I am Mabel Anang. Let's do some energy stories. The Ghana Grid Company, Gridco's task force, has demolished illegal structures under some of its high-tension transmission lines in some parts of Ayawaso West Wogo municipality. Gridco said the exercise forms part of effort to stop human activities around its lines. It explained that the demolished sites are not conducive for human habitation in view of the high voltage that the lines carry.
Gridco has over the years been cautioning Ghanaians not to leave or build structures under transmission lines. The company said the transmission lines carry between 161,000 and 330,000 volts. Therefore, living under them is highly dangerous. To avert any unforeseen incidents, Gridco has started demolishing structures under and near the lines in some communities in the Ayawaso West Wogon municipality. The affected areas are behind the Fiesta Royal Hotel, Aigbe Town, Bawaleshi, Ajringano, and America House. Manager at the office of the CEO of Gridco, Mr. Bernard Jan, spoke to GBC News.
We have constantly engaged these squatters and we constantly engage them, we educate them about the dangers of living within the right of way. So as far as Gridco is concerned, there is a whole task force equipped and resourced to be able to go around to educate these people about the dangers of living under the right of way, and they are aware.
Hundreds of squatters at Bawaleshi rushed to remove some of their belongings before the structures were demolished by the task force. Some squatters were unhappy, claiming that Gridco did not give them prior notice before the exercise.
Recently, they came around to move from here, and we decided, no, if you are moving from here, look for a place for us, because we are 120 masters over here.
Under the transmission line protection regulations, it is an offense for persons or institutions to conduct any form of activity in relation to the lands around the location of power transmission lines and towers in.
Now, the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, has extended the one-month moratorium given to customers to herald the nationwide exercise of auditing all meters, which ended on 6th July 2022. The two-week extension, which is expected to end on July 20th, is due to the overwhelming feedback from customers. A statement from ECG says the extension is to give opportunity to customers to report to its district and regional offices to rectify any issues relating to electricity services.
Within the extended moratorium, customers are to report post-paid meters which are not captured in the system for billing, prepaid meters which have challenges with loading of electricity credit, and are faulty. Also, customers who have bypassed or tampered with their meters and are therefore not paying for the full cost of power usage, and those who have engaged in any form of electrical illegality are to visit ECG offices to remedy the problem. ECG urges customers to take advantage of the extension to report all anomalies on their meters, explaining that after the moratorium, customers who engage in illegal activities will be charged with the offense of stealing in accordance with the law. The Tema Regional Public Relations Officer of ECG, Madam Sechua Mensah, spoke with GBC News.
We gave a moratorium to our customers for about a month. They have any challenges with their meters or they've done some form of illegal connection, they should please inform us so that we'll be able to work it out without having to go through the court process. And the feedback has been good, it has been overwhelming, and based on that, we decided that we should extend it.
And I bring a local story from the presidency, where President Akufo-Addo has signed a book of condolence at the Embassy of Japan in Accra following the assassination of former Prime Minister of the East Asian island country, Shinzo Abe. The president expressed sadness about the death of Mr. Abe. On behalf of the government and people of Ghana, he extended his sincere condolences and deep sympathies to Emperor Naruhito, Prime Minister, the government and people of Japan, and to his family on the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The president said the East Asian country has lost a noble patriot and distinguished democrat who been missed by all for a very long time. He said it was a privilege and pleasure knowing and meeting Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
After 10 years' time, as I mentioned in my occasion of presenting credentials to Your Excellency, so I'm so grateful for your cooperation.
My presence here is for a very simple reason. We enjoy a very good relationship with your country. Japan has been a faithful and reliable friend of Ghana through all the difficulties and the troubles that we've been through in our country. And you continue to be a strong friend of our country. So I think in times of trouble, that's when the friends reveal themselves. And that is why I came here, to let you know that the Ghanaian people in this moment of loss and grief, and that you're not alone. There are no other people who care about Japan. We here in Ghana, we continue to care about Japan. So that is the purpose of my visit here. He was Prime Minister when I was last in Japan, and was a very, very gracious host. He hosted us at meetings and the lunch, and it was very memorable. I remember that very well and appreciated very much his hospitality at the time. So it's a pity. We're going to come to Tunisia for the takeout, and it's a pity that this should have happened on the eve of the takeout event. But there it is. God knows best. So we take it like that.
Welcome to the health segment brought to you by kind courtesy Lufat. Civil society groups are appealing to the United Nations Human Rights Council to include the human rights of persons with psychosocial disabilities in its assessment of Ghana's human rights performance ahead of the Universal Periodic Review process by the Council in January next year. An alternative report indicating recommendations and challenges encountered by persons with disability and mental illness is being presented to the United Nations Human Rights Council to improve Ghana's outcome.
The delivery of quality, accessible and affordable healthcare to persons with psychosocial disabilities is considered a fundamental human right. Yet, inadequate funding for service providers, collection of user fees, the shackling of patients at prayer camps, inadequate stock of psychotropic drugs, and stigma, among others, infringe upon such rights. For those with disability, they are often marginalized and excluded from participation and accessing social services. Mental health care financing seems to be a mirage, and the Mental Health Authority seems to be uncertain what to do next. An estimated 700 million is required annually to implement the mental health policy. Throughout the country, there is not a single government-established rehabilitation center, and the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty funds are not disbursed with utmost transparency. The United Nations Human Rights Council reviews the human rights record of all member states every 4 years under the Universal Periodic Review process. This major international mechanism is used for monitoring and reporting on the compliance of states to universal human rights standards. With such a process in the offing, Mind Freedom Ghana collaborated with 33 other civil society and non-governmental organizations to collect data on the progress made nationwide over the years in ensuring that the fundamental human rights of these vulnerable groups are respected. About 16 recommendations were collated. These include comprehensive application of the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty and sourcing of funds for mental health care.
And then improve and scale human treatment protocols. Focus on people-centered care. People-centered care, the human face to it. A right-based is inclusive, is representative. It is people-centered, the people that services are delivered to. And so we need this to happen as part of our recommendation. And then finally, I want to highlight the provision of regional rehabilitation centers across the country. And this came out strongly throughout all the zones.
Institutions and development partners such as the Mental Health Authority, the World Health Organization, the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, the National Commission for Persons with Disability, the European Union and the Norwegian Embassy supported the compilation of the shadow report to be presented to the United Nations Human Rights Council. Zero for GBC News.
That's all for this segment, brought to you by Kind Courtesy Lufat.